Now, many schools have returned in the last week after a summer which has seen both A-levels and GCSE results dip. The new curriculum's just come into force in England and sees a return to traditional values, but also the introduction of new subjects like computer coding. But will it properly prepare our children for the world ahead of them? Today we're asking, what should kids learn at school? Well, joining me now to discuss that are Katie Ivins from the Campaign for Real Education and social affairs commentator Sonia Poulton. Thank you both very much for joining us this morning. Just before we get started, though, a reminder that you can join in our Sky News debates. You can tweet us at Sky News, including the hashtag Sky Debate, text on 84501 or email news@sky.com. Let us know what you think, or if there are any points that you want to put to our guests here. We'll read out some of your comments as we go along. First of all, let's have a look at what children actually do learn at school. Well, there have been some significant changes to the curriculum, which now sees 5-year-olds in England having to learn fractions for the first time. Primary school children are also being taught evolution for the first time. They'll also learn to recite poetry and how to spell words with a silent letter like night and knee. And to forget word processing, 5-year-olds will also learn how to create and test computer programs. Moving on to secondary schools, and all pupils aged between 11 and 14 have to learn at least 2 Shakespeare plays. There'll be a focus on learning much more about British history. And with design now part of the curriculum, teenagers will have to start using equipment like 3D printers and become familiar with robotics. Well, Katie Ivins from the Campaign for Real Education and social affairs commentator Sonia Poulton are both here. And Sonia, to you first. You've been disillusioned in past with the education system in the UK. You took your children out of it and homeschooled.
Yes.
What do you think is wrong with the current system?
Oh, where do I start? Okay, well, the problem with the current system is it's based on an old, outdated model. And I believe that it has failed systematically over a period of time. Doesn't matter how many governments go in and tinker with the system, the fundamental basis of the system is wrong because, as I say, it's based on an archaic system, which was actually designed to stop the factories. It was really all we required of people when the curriculum first came into being was for people to have a basic education and to show up and work the machines, and that's what it's based on. And obviously what it's failed to do is move with the times in our technologically savvy age. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I know 5-year-olds who know their way around a computer, and so that's what we need to adapt to. So I do welcome the advent of computer coding, but there's much more I feel that we need to do.
So Katie Ivins, we're stuck in the past, we need to move on.
Yes, but the past that we're stuck in is not the factory past that Sonia is talking about. The past that we're stuck in was, oh gosh, about 30 or 40 years of what's called child-centred education, in which the focus was not on the teacher teaching the child, but supposedly the child learning him or herself, and children interacting with each other rather than interacting with the teacher and being taught. And that is our great problem. Our great problem is still that not enough children are being taught how to read properly. This is absurd, as a matter of fact. Another thing that I do as well as campaigning is I help to run an educational charity, and we're just celebrating 15 years of our Butterfly Saturday reading schools. And by working with children from very deprived backgrounds, we have demonstrated that all children can be taught to read very, very quickly and very, very simply. So they should all be taught to read in the first year of primary schooling. They should be fluent, independent readers at the end of the first year. At the moment, we are hearing about
by the age of 5?
6, 7, whatever it is, the age of 6, they should all be fluent readers. They should be able to read independently. You then would teach them literature and history and geography and all these things, and you would teach them properly. And by all means, yes, they're going to be gifted with computers and all the rest of it. You must provide them with this sound basis for life.
Let's bring Sonia back in. I mean, Sonia, as Katie was saying, the need for basics is crucial to so many people. Now, there's a report out today which says that 1.5 million children are leaving primary school unable to read well. We need to get those basics fixed, don't we?
We need 3 basics, as we used to call them traditionally, the 3 R's. Beyond that, I believe that there is scope to get far more creative with the system.
But we don't seem to have the 3 R's, do we?
And the problem is that clearly there is something wrong. There's something wrong, there has to be, and as I say, it's because it's an archaic system, it lacks inspiration. What we need to do, actually, I disagree with Katie, I don't believe it is child-centred anymore. I think it's very much about ticking boxes, and what we need to do is start teaching our children to think outside the box. I'm very much of the belief that we need to look to a model called the theory of multiple intelligence. We still have a very narrow definition of intelligence, which is based on the old IQ system. I don't believe that's sufficient anymore. We need to look more at what Howard Gardner, a psychologist, designed, which was the theory of multiple intelligence, and it looks at things like bodily kinesthetic. You know, when you look at a dancer, you say that the way that dancer moves is incredible. So I'm more for making education much more vocational. And you see, the thing is, the biggest problem that we have is the lack of employment. We're sending children out into the world with skills that are essentially redundant and irrelevant to the workplace. But what we should be doing is concentrating on the natural abilities and talents that those children have and making the most of them at school.
Let's bring Katie, because you're raising your eyebrows.
Of course,
about as high as
well, Katie's much more of a traditionalist than I am.
No, look, come on, I'm not going to have this idea, I'm looking backwards. We look forwards with our children. If we want them to go forwards, we have to give them a proper education. We have to pass on the riches of our knowledge and our understanding for one generation to the next. You've got to get the 3 R's right, get them right from the first, keep with them, by the way, and then you swiftly move on to creativity, if you like, comprehension, all these things.
We're not getting the 3 R's right, though, are we?
That is the problem. That is the problem. Get them right, and you can do anything, quite honestly. On you go.
Well, let's remind ourselves what the politicians are saying about all this. The Education Secretary, Michael Gove, said about why he wanted to transform England's schools.
We know that England's private schools are regularly ranked as the best independent schools in the world. So why shouldn't our state schools be regularly ranked as the best state schools in the world? My ambition for our education system is simple. When you visit a school in England, standards are so high all round that you simply cannot tell whether it is a state school or an independent fee-paying school.
I think kids should definitely be learning about coding and about the new advances in computing. They've got to get their maths and their English right. You've got to have those as the basics, because then that opens up history and geography and foreign languages. It opens up science, physics and chemistry and biology. You want to get those academic fundamentals right, but then we in the Labour Party are very passionate about also allowing those young people at a later stage to pursue vocational and technical pathways as well. So academic fundamentals are core, and then giving young people the options to pursue their pathways. We know one of the fascinating things about education is that a lot of children learn as much from their peers as they do from teachers. And I think particularly in areas of new computer advance and coding and all the rest of it, I think you will have a lot of learning between peer groups as much as you do in terms of a sort of rather old-fashioned notion of dissemination of knowledge from the front.
Well, we're bringing in now Dr Emily Grossman, who's a former teacher and now a private maths and science tutor, and the author of What Every Parent Needs to Know. Toby Young is here as well. Toby, just hearing what the politicians have said there, what's your vision for future of education in the UK?
Well, I agree with Michael Gove. I think that all children should have the opportunity to have a fairly traditional, rigorously academic education. The kind of education that's typically given to children in good, old-fashioned prep schools. It's wrong that that should be confined to just those who can afford it. That's the kind of education that should be available to all children, so we can level the playing field and make sure all children have the same chance of getting into good universities, getting a foothold in one of the professions.
Emily, is that the right kind of education for all children in the UK, and is it the kind of education we should be aspiring to for the future of the country?
I think there's a real tension between that type of educational system, which is very merit-based and prepares students for really being successful and going out and changing the world, and then also a more life skills-based education for those who may not have learnt so much from their home life or their families and who need more support. In fact, everybody needs that support to understand financial markets, to understand mortgages, taxes, how the government works, how the educational system works, all those life skills that are actually going to equip them, team skills, emotional skills that are going to equip them to go out into the world of work, and not just the success.
But are things like understanding, mortgage rates, understanding loans, any use to children if they can't actually read when they leave primary school?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's why there needs to be a balance. I'm not suggesting that we go away from any of the RRR and really making sure that math skills and creative skills and writing and numeracy and literacy are so important, but it's about practical applications of those as well. And in my opinion, particularly for arithmetic, it's much more about the logic problem, the skills, problem-solving techniques which go along with learning maths, rather than just picking up a calculator and saying tap in 3 times 12.
A lot of you have been getting in touch with us. Wayne Teal has tweeted using the hashtag #SkyDebate. He says they should teach respect at school, manners and what's right and wrong. D.A. Maloney tweets simply that kids should learn numbers and the alphabet. And Barris tweets, teach more about taxes. I wasn't taught that. Well, another key aim is for primary school children to learn languages. And we're not just talking about French and German. There's a push to get kids to learn more languages like Mandarin. Let's get the view of our China correspondent, Mark Stone. He's in Beijing.
Well, just take a look at that skyline behind me. That is Beijing's central business district. Just 10-15 years ago, none of that was there. Now it is growing and it's changing every single day. Everywhere you go in China, there's a sense that this place is in a hurry. And to keep up and get with it, surely the language is a good place to start. Well, over the next 10 years, the Chinese consumers' combined spending power will quadruple to the equivalent of $10 trillion US. And in that time, just 10 years, China will become the world's largest economy. And that's at a time when the economies of European countries whose languages we still teach our kids are stagnating and in some cases shrinking. Well, clearly the opportunities for British businesses here in China are already there. That is a British design building over there. It's called Galaxy Soho. It's already a bit of an icon here. But in the future, as the economy grows, so too will those opportunities. And if our kids of today, the business leaders of tomorrow, can speak Mandarin, well, that's got to help, surely.
In the studio, I'm joined by Dr Emily Grossman, a former teacher, now a private maths and science tutor, and the author of What Every Parent Needs to Know, Toby Young. Is that a compelling argument, Toby? Do you think all of our children should be taught Mandarin these days?
Well, you can be taught Mandarin at primary school from the age of 7 and at secondary school now. The new national curriculum, for the first time ever, has mandated that languages should be taught in schools from Key Stage 2 onwards. So schools have the option of teaching Mandarin, they can teach a modern foreign language, they can teach an ancient language like Latin if they want to. And at the secondary school I co-founded, the West London Free School, 3 years ago, Latin is mandatory up to the age of 14.
But is that right, do you think? Should they be being taught Mandarin at 6? Or should they be being taught to read and to add up and to do their times tables?
Well, I don't think there's a conflict. I don't think it's either or. I think in Key Stage 1 and in reception, so from the age of 4 to 7, they should be focusing on the fundamentals. They should be doing systematic synthetic phonics, which is proven to be the best way to teach children to read. Once they can read, I think by the age of 7 or 8, it is time to start teaching them a modern foreign language and or an ancient foreign language, or Mandarin. And I think to assume that working class children need to focus on the fundamentals and only the children of the elite who go to middle class schools should be able to do languages is wrong. That's a way of enforcing the social apartheid we already have in this country, not breaking it down.
Dr Emily Grossman, do you think we have become too child-centric in the way that we teach our children, that we are focusing very much on making it accessible to children, including computers, including swipe screens? Should they not just be sat down behind a blackboard and taught, this is how you do your 6 times table? I
think in teaching skills there is a balance between the two. Yes, some students really benefit from learning by rote, from learning by example and by education, by someone telling them what's what. That's really helpful for some students. But some students really need to interact with each other to solve the problems for themselves, to be given an issue and said, you work out with your friends how to work out the answer to this. And in fact, in terms of life skills, that's what's more important, to actually develop that analytical way of thinking.
Very briefly, Toby, only got 30 seconds left. You're a man involved in employing a lot of teachers. Are teachers these days up to the challenge of changing the way they teach our children?
I think they are. I think one of the great things about the new national curriculum is it empowers teachers, it professionalises them by giving them much more discretion about how they teach and what they teach in the classroom.
OK, then we must leave it. Toby Young and Dr Emily Grossman, thanks very much. And don't forget, do keep in touch with us. Keep your tweets and emails coming in on the Sky Debates, including the hashtag Sky Debate. You can text us or email us.